We're back. We just can't get away from it. Cannot get away. Good old Central Park. Oh, we're back out here. And the brambles are roving. Just doing personal video diary. Just purely a hobbyist here. I feel like I've been talking too much about Trump. My clip farming hasn't been going that well. My last round of clips didn't do that great, really, to be honest. So, I don't know. I'm going to try to talk about other things, possibly, but possibly not. I don't know. We'll see. Personal, literary matters, life matters, life planning things. Here's my man. This guy, he's out here. He plays like this fucking lute or something in Central Park. Dude's out here playing the lute, laying it the fuck down. It's like really hot today. It went from being, chilly winter-esque type shit. Chilly winter-esque to like summer. It literally feels like it's fucking August right now. 85 degrees. So I'm back on the Upper West Side. I don't really want to get into what. Well, I mean, I came back up to buy weed, basically. The weed that I bought in Brooklyn was kind of not hitting. I don't know what it is. They're selling skunk weed to all these trust fund kids that are suckers who live in Bushwick. I don't know. They got some straight gas on the Upper West Side. What can I say? So, I'm such a crackhead. I took the train all the way up here. Plus, I just love Central Park. I'm just a Central Park fanatic. And I guess I'm trying to like wean myself off. Going through Central Park withdrawal, Ashley withdrawal, Upper West Side withdrawal. I don't know. I'm just mystically drawn to the Upper West Side. I can't stay away. It's like I have to go there for some reason. Called. Just keep coming back. So fuck. What am I gonna talk about today? Um well, I was reading this book. Well, okay, so yeah, I was reading this book that I picked up at the other day at St. Mark's or East Village Books, I guess. It's on St. Mark's Place, but it's called East Village Books. St. Mark's Books was something else, and it's not there anymore. But it was $2, and it's like lectures that W.H. Auden gave about the sea and this. It's the romantics' attitude towards, I don't know, just nature, life. As it starts off with this part from the prelude, Wordsworth talking about Don Quixote and like an Arabic kind of like Bedouin shepherd guy. And so Wordsworth like hallucinates this interaction with this figure who's sort of like this mystical shepherd Bedouin slash Don Quixote. And so the character is like holding a stone and a shell in addition to his like lance and shit like that. And it's something about the sea in the mirror or sea in the desert too. There's something where it's like there's a contrast. The character's like looking out at the sea and then it turns into the dead. I don't remember exactly the fucking like hallucin. I think it's a dream. I think it's a dream he has. And so the whole book is W.H. Auden sort of like articulating various attitudes towards these metaphorical systems, whatever the fuck that, like the sea and the desert being these classic images, archetypal kind of metaphorical spaces. What do they mean? In early literature, the sea means, he starts off with like a quote from fucking Genesis, the Bible. The Spirit of God moved over the face of the waters. The waters are dark, but there is water. So the waters like represent this kind of chaotic wilderness, overpowering force. They're basically areas that are contrasted with like human civilization. People go to the sea like Melville and shit, right? Uh so it's like it's a lecture that he gives, and it's just like he's basically quoting from all this like literature. Moby Dick, um, Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, like I said, the Bible, Jesus goes to the desert. And so the desert represents a different kind of metaphor. It's more like the terminus of life. It's still, it's dead, it's dry, it's air, it's a different kind of. And so I don't know, it's kind of an interesting book. I like poets' prose. I like, there was this one book I read when I first moved to New York, Paul Muldoon. I think it's called The End of the Poem. Uh, I could be wrong about that. Paul Muldoon was the poetry editor of The New Yorker, I think, for a long time. I think he's Irish. He's like a protege, maybe of Seamus Heaney, but he's like a little more Charles Simicky or something. He's a white guy, of course. Uh, he plays in garage bands and stuff. He's got a book of like his lyrics. He's in some band in New Jersey or something that plays and like, you know. So anyway, this book, End of the Poem, is lectures Paul Muldoon gave. I don't even fucking know. I think he was Oxford Chair of Poetry or some shit like that. They choose one every year, and all the big shots, Auden, they've all done it. And so it was like the lectures he gave, but it's really interesting because part of the point, he basically just goes through and interprets all these different poems, the shit you'd expect Yeats or Elizabeth Bishop, or I don't really remember. I read the whole fucking thing the first few months I lived in New York, because part of the technique of the book is he kind of allows any reading into the poem that you can find, including if there's words in there that aren't in there that look like the words in there. They're just different. They're shorter. They're different. They're just different words. So it's like it influenced my way of reading and writing, because part of the point is like you might put something in the poem that's wrong, or uh kind of a subversion of the intentional thing that you might say, or you might misspell things, you might include the misspellings, you might include a different word that looks like the word that you would probably actually use. These are ways, I think, of expanding the dimensions of the poem, in it allowing, if the poem allows for all these sort of like ulterior interpretations that aren't maybe literally there, or like you kind of have to read between the lines, or uh just make shit up. I mean, not necessarily like without foundation. The idea is the poet is working at such a compressed level that all of these interpretations are actually in there. The then it's there might even be ambiguity about what the ultimate point of the poem is. In fact, that's generally what poetry is supposed to do, right? It's supposed to like elude your understanding. It's supposed to resist the intelligence almost successfully, I think is what Wallace Stevens said. And so it's not necessarily supposed to make fucking sense. It's supposed to be just beyond your fingertips of understanding. And I think too often everybody just writes to have immediate impact, to be immediately understood. I'm looking more at like these kind of phantom meanings, these like vexed meanings, where the meaning is, you don't need to say the intentional thing because it's understood, like everybody knows that. And so you put in something that's like not necessarily the opposite, but maybe something that subjugates it or graffitiizes it or defaces it or something, subverts it, gives the opposite meaning, but with the intention of the original thing. The idea is like now they're both there. And this area up here is supposed to have nice cherry blossoms. This area by the reservoir. So I thought it'd be a good day to come out and get some flowers and shit. Um, what does this have to do with the WHL? I guess that because they're just both poet lectures. Um, like fucking James Merrill wrote his poems with a Ouija board. Like literally, he'd sit down at a fucking Ouija board and like let the Ouija board tell him what the fuck to write down. And I think the idea with poetry is you're supposed to just like encapsulate something so and just compress so many different interpretations, so many different kinds of information, different meanings, different, at least for me, it's more about creating an ambiguity that probably has a definiteness in it, but you have to kind of look for it a little bit. It's not totally just about, the legible surface of whatever the fuck opinion you're trying to put across and I guess there's a silliness to that, to just sort of turning obvious platitudes into some kind of gibberish or uh but I think there's validity to that. I think people that spend as much time among secrets and language and hidden messages, poetry is kind of just like a code or something. It's like it is like complicating the truth. So it's, something that only people who want to decipher it, want to understand it, want to unpack it. And to me, to some degree, I want to write something that demands close reading. It has some kind of immediate impact. It's funny, it's entertaining. There's things that are true or whatever, food for thought. Um, but it's also something that like it moves really fast and it's happening really fast in front of you. So it rewards going back and sitting with it, spending time with it, studying it. Like reading this fucking passage of Wordsworth. It's literally fucking, you know, 2.5 pages in this goddamn W.H. Auden lecture, and he quotes the whole thing. But it's like it took me, probably half an hour to read it because the language. I mean, that's the crazy thing about Wordsworth is it's like he is like telling you this whole fucking story, but it's like the language is in blank verse. It's in meter. I mean, it's unrhymed, but you can feel the structure. You can feel the emphasis. There's something that's hypnotic about, meter, the a pattern of stresses, a line length, and I think a lot of people try to do that now, and maybe it has to sound artificial. That's part of the fucking spell that it casts. Like iambic pentameter, uh, or reading anything that has like a strong kind of portioning out of like its rhythm. That here they are. That's one of the most hypnotic kind of persuasive elements of poetry. My writing is much more about the sound of thinking, trying to capture, the experience of consciousness in all of the fragmentedness and yeah, here they are. Maybe I'll sit here for a minute, smoke weed and ramble about poetry. And so I don't know, it can take a long time to write pieces that are like that have like the exact rhythm and uh let's see here for a minute. Shade, ramble. Let me get this book out and actually read some shit. I thought about just reading it on my fucking live stream. Why not just read live and try and understand it online with whoever the fuck is out there watching? I also wanted to talk about Professor Zhang. Maybe I'll get into that for a second before I get into this fucking poetry book. Um, my man, Professor Zhang. Here it is, The Enchaffed Flood. So the book, it's in 3 parts, and he basically just unpacks the metaphor system where it's like the first part is about the sea and the desert, which is sort of like the metaphorical setting, the poetic setting. The second part is the stone and the shell, which are the 2 things, the Bedouin, who's this sort of like dreamlike guide figure. Don Quixote is holding the shell, meaning human creativity, listening. To some degree, I think it's up to each reader to unpack what these metaphors mean. I kind of hate it when they always talk about, oh, the romantics write about, the sea and the mother and the night and Whitman gets it from them. And it's like, I don't know. I just think that's kind of a boring way to read. I guess that's what they had to deal with. That's what their lives were full of, was like, there's the ocean, there's the field, there's this is what they saw, this is what they lived. But I think as writers, people do get too caught up in these kind of texts where it's like proclaiming that there's this very definite kind of like exact system of metaphors and this and that, and here's what it means, here's what the sea means in these texts, and maybe it's true, but I just don't find it that interesting of a way to read, to be honest. I found it more interesting when Paul Muldoon was like misinterpreting shit. Right, is that's the Harold Bloom thing, right? Anxiety of influence. The idea is you're supposed to strongly misread your predecessors. The idea is, the generations of poets are changing poetry and inventing new poetries by doing strong misreadings. Like the idea was Shakespeare read Christopher Marlowe, and a lot of Shakespeare's work is like sort of taking a basis from Christopher Marlowe and kind of bending it a little bit into this other thing. And there's examples. It's almost like the poetic canon is like these chains of influences. Rimbaud influenced Hart Crane, who influenced, whatever it is. But the idea is each generation misreads the previous generation. I don't know if I buy this. It's very like patriarchal and kind of white male ish. Like, I don't think a lot of women were involved with these chains of influence, but I think the idea of like you're misreading your predecessors, or even misreading or misinterpreting as a basis of composition, mishearing things, mistranslating things. Everything is kind of a misunderstanding in a way. And poetry is a way, I suppose, of getting at some kind of exact definition of some little portion of experience or something. But um, no matter how exact the language is, it still has abstract qualities that leave room for interpretation and ambiguity. The stone of abstract geometry. Uh, he has this wonderful line, geometric truth on poetry and geometric truth. What the fuck does that mean? Geometric truth, the knowledge that endures. Geometric truth. I think there's some mathematical exactitude going on there that's happening in language, in explanation, in the amount of information you use, how it's deployed, how it springs into action through the word choices, the inspiration of the word choices, the genius of what you're able to use that works, that's kind of coming from an unexpected place, slotting in some kind of like geometric truth, throwing that word in. It's kind of an unexpected because it's mathematical. Geometric implies almost like a scientific angularity, measurement, relative, this is here and this is here. And, with poetry, with language, trying to get that same effect through explanation of experience. Uh, so I don't know. I find poets are like, more or less this is just it's sort of like there's this great book of E. Cummings lectures, six non-lectures. I encourage people to get their hands on any kind of like poet lecture book. They a lot of times they'll like bind up like they have Ashbery's lectures, it's called Other Traditions. It's like the talks Harvard does it's the Charles Eliot Norton lecture series. Every year they get a different poet. I think Laurie Anderson did it a few years ago. And Ashbery did it, all the big shots. I think Borges did it. I think there's a Borges book of his lectures, but E. Cummings did it. And his lectures, it's called Six Non-Lectures. And it's really just like he quotes at length from all this fucking poetry he likes. And so it's really a way of seeing his influences and how he became the poet and the artist that he became. He likes a lot of like old English stuff, Middle English stuff, the Fairy Queen type shit, Chaucer, shit that's like in some kind of weird Middle English that like we don't quite understand anymore. The spellings are all crazy. To me, I don't know. I relate to that kind of poetry almost more. Things that are in flux. They're not, there isn't necessarily this completely codified. That feels more truthful to the way people actually write, just normal human beings. And so I want my poetry to look more like somebody's text messages or something rather than like some kind of MLA standard academic. To me, punctuation is bourgeois. Punctuation's too expensive. It costs too much. Like punctuation, it's there for the consideration of the reader, and I understand the meaning of it, but it also feels like inaccurate. Life doesn't feel like it really has any kind of like meaning, or thoughts don't really have punctuation. And when I look at how now we are actually in this world where people are exchanging these kind of brief, short messages, whether it's texting or DMs or comments or whatever the hell it is. And so you get to see a lot of people's creativity with their writing style. Look at the average person in a fucking comment section, what their command of like the language is. It's fucking insane how low the fucking reading and writing abilities. There isn't any. These people write the way they talk. We're lucky they know any fucking words. We're lucky they know the alphabet or anything, but, like, they might write in all caps, they might not use punctuation. Just look at any comment section. Look at any comment section on any Grateful Dead video. And so, I don't necessarily wanna go all in on total illiteracy, but my understanding of it is there was controversy when Wordsworth came out with the Prelude and his work because he was writing in the language of the actual people. He wasn't writing in this kind of highfalutin academic. He was trying to capture the way that people really thought, really talked, really wrote. And granted, we read it now and it's incredibly sophisticated and articulate and hard to chop through because it's so dense. But at the time, it was looked on as like this kind of it was like punk rock or something. It was like these guys don't know how to play their instruments. It's like this weird blank verse and it's unrhymed and it's just kind of prattling on and on. It's not as pressurized in a way. It's not couplets. It's not there's no rhyme scheme, at least not to the prelude. Um Which I like. I encourage anybody to read The Prelude. I read it when I first moved to New York, The Growth of a Poet's Mind. And so, my approach was to write the way people talk now, the way that people text, the way that well, not people necessarily. Like this is to me, the way that I write is the sound of speech, thinking, real life. It's not cleaned up. It's not ironed out. It's not revised. It's if you I literally will write down things that I say, that other people say, the way that thoughts spring to life. To me, there's kind of more interest in the organic kind of live birth of a fucking little worm of a phrase kind of springing into being that sort of has an unusual cadence or pattern or, the words kind of come out in unexpected ways. A lot of times, to me, the most brilliant, at least like remarks or quips or speech, that's how it goes down. There's some word that sort of pops out or it comes out in some weird way that wouldn't, if you sat down to write it perfectly, like for fucking the New York Times or something, it wouldn't come out that way. But it's more about using the voice that you hear around you, the way people actually speak, the way people with less education speak, the way people with less money speak, the speech you hear around you, like we are living in a decay. But look at Chaucer. If we look at Chaucer now, it looks radically illiterate in a way. They have to do these like fucking translations and shit to turn it into like modern English so we can understand it. Shakespeare's like that too. If you look at the first folio, it's fucking crazy the way they spell shit. They'll spell the same word three different ways, and they use S for F and vice versa, and there's commas right in the middle of the fucking sentence that in ways that make no sense to us now, but they meant different things back then. A comma had a different intention. There's people laughing at my streaming. And so, I like the idea of poetry as sort of this living body of language amongst the people. The ironic part is generally poor or less educated, or I don't know, the people who are like the common citizens of poetry who just go to open mics or like readings and bars is like they want something that's like boiled down, distilled, condensed, ironed out. They want all the traffic patterns of punctuation and guiding people through the comprehension with this kind of measured um like sympathy for the reader or understanding for the reader. For me, it's more about I don't know, trying to capture the sound of things as they actually happen in the weird, mangled, backward, fucking imperfect way that they actually do. I think William Carlos Williams, it was a similar thing where it's like he was trying to get common speech, right? Like his one poem is like literally a note he wrote to his wife. I ate the plums that were in the icebox. They were so delicious. Whatever. He's got a bunch of poems that are just like these little messages. They're not these kind of academic, uh, like really overwrought. And I don't know, the poetry that I sort of like towards liking, that's my understanding. That's where it comes from. Things like the Fairy Queen or Walt Whitman. There's like a magic in it because of its wildness, because of its, there's some, it's almost like nature. It's like including some kind of weird species that's dying. It's like they want to sandblast the language into this super homogenized, like corporate MLA, like the fucking semicolon goes here, or else the little Microsoft Word app is going to underline it in red because you fucking misspelled it or you didn't use the right proper syntax or whatever. I'm kind of more interested in the dysmorphic mutations, the defects. I don't know. To me, especially in like an age of AI, of computer perfection, that is where the species of unusual little animals are. The little magical creatures of the forest are more like Chaucer language. It's like this weird, uh, you know, brew. It's a strange brew. It's got to have this kind of fermented psychedelic, uh, dissociated from perfection. That's not to say there's not a place for the other thing. I used to like my poem, The Snow, which I read a couple weeks ago. Like that poem plays by all of the rules. It's got semicolons in it and shit like that. And it works. It commands the rhythm. It's like now all my poems kind of have the same rhythm. It's like it goes this way a little bit, then it goes that way, and then it goes that. It's like it's almost like shoes squeaking on a basketball court. It's just things constantly are changing direction because you're in this field of action. You're in this field of play, like a live stream. It's like the poem is just sort of like this time capsule of things that occurred, epiphanies, funny jokes that I thought up that I had nobody to tell. And it's a way of kind of writing an autobiographical novel in an epic poem form that's oral and in the moment, from the moment, live as it's happening. I mean, I think it's useful to see the things that W.H. Auden keys in on. I'm reading this just to get ideas, really. But I also think that most poets are kind of in the business of like, and most writers maybe are of like really being intentional about like their symbols. Like a poem in a certain way, it's like you're almost kind of trying to distill it down to one symbol that is the focus. Your poem stays focused on this subject, this symbol, and it elucidates all these kind of like nuances within the metaphorical symbol of whatever the symbol is representing. Um, and the poet is almost like this. It's like the sea and the desert. It's like or the sea and it's like they're so vague and they're sort of timeless in that regard, but they're also just sort of like, I don't know. As a writer, I'm more interested in referring to the specifics of all of the little actual information, the actual details, because I do think that there's untapped metaphorical power in that. What is the meaning? To me, that's more what poetry is about. It's like it's a way of documenting and sort of decoding or coaxing out of life whatever the fuck what does this mean? Like my life is the metaphor. Like what does this person represent? What is Trump? What is the tech technology. Why not engage with the immediate stuff, the immediate kind of bric-a-brac and names of everything we actually live with, the products, the consumer products, um, news, the because I do think life is some kind of weird poem, lesson, uh, like, or poetry is like an imitation or like a layering over of life, which is the actual poem. The things that happen to us are so endless and exhaustive, and there's just an infinite warehouse of like detail, and it relates to this and this memory, and it ties back to this, and there's poetic justice, and okay. Um, and I think to some degree they just didn't have the technology to tell that story until now. Maybe that story doesn't have any interest to anybody but yourself. Maybe your life is like some dream that nobody else cares about. And writing about your life, you have to like put something else in it to like make people care about it. Like other people don't understand your inside jokes or your total life history or what like I was taking the train from Ridgewood. I got on the L train and I'm or Bushwick, I'm in goddamn Bushwick. And who do I see when I'm getting on the fucking L train? Goddamn Adam Fitzgerald. Who like I expect to see in fucking Manhattan, but like now he's in goddamn Ridgewood. And it's like, what is Adam Fitz? He's like this weird metaphor in my life. Like Adam Fitzgerald is like this weird like parallel to me, even though he probably has no idea who I am. Like, uh, it's things like that. Elements of coincidence, elements of, things that you're drawn to, things that you're connected to. The way the story of your life is, like that's what novels are. They're imitations of people's life, like things that actually happen. And it's sort of like this thing, truth is stranger than fiction, or to me, poetry is a way of writing about the truth as a way of like telling that story, the part that's stranger than fiction. These coincidences, these deep kind of mystical moments in your life where you meet somebody or things just sort of fall into place. The hand of God sort of comes in and makes things happen the way they're supposed to happen. That's sort of what I'm trying to figure out the meaning of is like if God is involved with our lives or something, if God is in everything, then by writing down all the details, by keeping track of the narrative, that is sort of like the way of uh it's like Dante. Dante is this metaphorical, mathematical, geometric truth where it's like everything is proportioned out according to things that happen in real life. These characters are real people and they're suffering in this sort of like poem that is hell, where everything is sort of like this exact justice measured out, poetic justice. This guy did this in real life, so this is what happens to him. He's on this level of hell, it's this far down. And it's mathematically so you know, it's like this perfect equation where everything's measured out. There's this many levels, and there's 3 books, and there's 100 lines in every canto, and there's 32 cantos, and blah blah blah. It's like there's this idea that there's math in everything, and math once again is like an explanation. It's not the real thing. Like there's math. We don't even know what the fuck it is. We figured out a way to define it, put a name on it, make it make sense to us and there's magical things in that, like geometric principles, ratios, and things, but like it's still just like a way that we're trying to figure out, like we don't really know why we're alive. We don't know why the tree's alive. We don't know why we die. We don't know what the fuck happens after. To me, like poetry is a way of trying to, uh, I don't know, commemorate and make a souvenir out of the dramaturgy of our lives in a lot of ways is so much more interesting than any piece of fiction, or the best pieces of fiction at best can sort of like capture that. Things like 100 Years of Solitude or Mad Men is like that for me. It's like it feels like life. It's like the way the characters change and get divorced and move and get divorced again. And, it's like that's more how life is than hero's journey type shit. Or like the hero's journey was just the best way they had of telling these sort of like encapsulated one and done narratives. But now it's like we have all this technology that enables us to show the actual story we're trying to tell. The fiction or literature in a way was just sort of like an imperfect way of telling everybody else shit that happened to us. We didn't have the technology to film it, to show people. It was just like we had writing and we had painting, and that was like it, and music, I guess. But like writing and painting were the only things you could record, really. And it was just a way of sort of just like capturing as best we could something that felt like it made sense out of life or held like a symbolic, something like Beowulf doesn't really, it's not really like exactly like life. It's more like, I mean, maybe their lives were like that. Maybe they were getting their arms ripped off. To them, it probably felt true because they had to deal with nature and unexpected acts of God. So things like Grendel is like a metaphor for, I don't know, fighting a grizzly bear, or it's a conglomeration of a bunch of different kind of nightmarish. They didn't really know what that shit was about. They didn't really, uh, they couldn't just watch a fucking documentary about, you know, sharks or something. You might see a shark once in your life or something, maybe. They just heard fucking stories about it. And so there was a lot of poetic license. I think in a certain way, that's all fiction is. It's like making shit up, lying. And it is kind of sad that that's dying now that everything's autofiction. To me, when I was in college and coming out of college, like kind of the mark of a writer was like how good your imagination was. You were supposed to make up stories and like, like 100 Years of Solitude, there might be things in that book that's like true, I guess, or autobiographical, but like the way it's all kind of reimagined and woven together is like the art of it. And you can do that with your life, like I am interested in that. I'm interested in Proust or Jack Kerouac, or, that is sort of what autofiction is. And it's no coincidence that a lot of these people are poets. The people who write autofiction, or, Eileen Miles, that's autofiction. Chelsea Girls, that's autofiction, and Ben Lerner, of course, autofiction. But it is kinda sad to me that nobody just, like, makes up, like, fanciful, or that's, like, I don't know, childish or something. Like, who's writing The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay now? That book almost seems like an artifact now. It's like, maybe I'm wrong, maybe somebody did write that book recently, uh, but, like, as far as I know, that's not what, like, Ocean Vuong's book is like. That's not what Ben Lerner's book is like. Like, Ben Lerner does not write fiction, really. He writes memoir, basically. That's what they used to call it. It used to be sort of like this fucking celebrity. The only people who you cared about their lives were celebrities. So you'd buy a book about their autobiography or whatever. You'd buy Suzanne Summers. Whereas Ben Lerner is just like this academic kind of dweeb who writes about his own life. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I just think it's strange that there is no fiction anymore in a way. And it makes sense because the internet is not fiction. We are inspired to like take this like really solipsistic, navel gazy, endless self observation. It's just amazing how narcissism has been like weaponized and encouraged within the last like 15 years. There used to be shame. People had shame, you know, self-promotion was, like, passé. Even, like, looking at yourself in the mirror was kinda like, "Look at this guy. This guy's full of himself." Now it's just like, that's one of the main businesses. It's one of the main ways you can make a living. Just be totally obsessed with yourself on the internet. Film yourself, film what else are you gonna film? You're not gonna make a documentary about something else. Me, aren't I great? Look how hot I am. Look how smart I am. Look how funny I am." And I mean, fiction has just become that. It's just like, here's my life, here's what happened. Or like if it is fiction, it's all about like the internet. It's like, oh, these are like some femcel. It's some weird, the more you can like categorize weird internet subcultures into your fiction, then it's like, oh, you've got your finger on the pulse of something that matters. I think the internet has got us so distracted by like documentary realism in ourselves that, it's just like, who's got time or interest to read some big book that's about something that's just made up? Uh, like what I can't even think of like an author. Who's an author that writes like some big I mean, even Jonathan Franzen books are like fictional. I know he's like a hack and he's sort of like a realist, but like the characters and shit are made up, presumably. David Foster Wallace, same kind of thing. It's like the dude, his book was sort of like fucking made up partially. You filled in the parts that you couldn't like document with made up shit. And that's kind of what made it magical. You took your imagination, which is something people don't really use anymore. Now it's just therapy. Everything is just like psychotherapy. It's like, here's what happened to me. And I do think there's value in that in a weird way. In fact, it's sort of weirdly my job, or like I feel like no experience is really complete until I like recount it into a tape recorder or something. Because, like I'm saying, the story is so unbelievable. The picaresque adventure of my life is the story. It is the novel. It is the movie. It is, you're taking notes for books you're going to write in the future by like having all these adventures and meeting people. You're sort of like mentally, maybe you'll base a character on this person or something. As writers, we are like totally vampiric, uh, dissociated, just tourists of experience, gobbling up the details. But I mean, how connected are we actually? Who knows? It's for the story later. And so but to me, it's just like life is so full of so many stories that are unbelievable. There's so many unbelievable people. There's so many unbelievable it's like, these people I know are incredible. And so, fiction a lot of times is you're basing it on somebody anyway. And so for me, it's like we are at a unique point in history where you can just film people. You can just film the real thing and capture them in their own brilliance and their own which a lot of times is more vivid than art. The art doesn't capture a lot. The art misses, you see people's wounds in real life. You see what they're like fighting against. Every single person is on some kind of like weird crusade against some wound they have. And a lot of times, I don't know, that doesn't come across in fiction or like writing. It's too one dimensional. It's too just assumed. Like people are fighting in real life to make anything happen, to express anything, to get any kind of point across. And they don't, every time they speak, they're trying to communicate something energetically. To me, I want to start from those movements. I want to take something that had energy, that had emotion, and memorialize it in some kind of line that is like a little perfect granula of poem. My poems became they're not about focus. They're not about staying on one subject. They're the opposite of that. We live in a distracted era, and I think it's just the nature of life to kind of have things flying all around you at all times. And I think to readers within the, you know, frame of a piece of work, it's hard to do that. It's hard to change subjects and for no fucking reason and have it, everything has to like be cohesive and be part of like some kind of unified or thought out metaphorical system like this, the sea and the desert. To me, it's more about like trusting the symbols, trusting the things that are alive and including them and allowing them to be alive. Just putting a little them in a little terrarium or something rather than beating them to death with some kind of like analysis dissecting what they mean. And I don't know what the fuck they mean. It just seemed powerful and it seemed right. To me, like painters, the artists that I admire they're much more instinctual, intuitive. They rely on their instincts. Something feels right. It sounds right. If you might, whereas for me, it's like it does take a lot of time to come up with something that's maybe a little bit more. I liken it to chess. To me, it's like my problem in high school, they'd give you half an hour to play a game. And I would take so much time planning my moves that a lot of times I'd be winning the game, but I'd have less than 5 minutes left. The other guy would have 15 minutes because I took so long to think. And so I'd have to play the end of the game really fast. And I usually won, but I preferred playing speed chess, where speed chess is like you have 2 minutes on the clock or whatever. So you don't have any time to think. It's all instinct. And so it's fast and loose and it's sloppy and it's gory and you lose a lot of pieces and I'm not any good at it. I'm much better if I had 6 hours to play. I'd probably be better that way. And I don't think I think that fast. A lot, that's why I'm like not that good at improv because it's like I kind of I like observing things. I like being outside the experience, like writing it down, recording it for later. It's hard for me to be like involved in something and like thinking on my feet or something quickly. But that being said, my poems are sort of taking my weakness, which is just writing fast. My poems are like speed chess. They're not like 6 hour on the clock. It's like I write it as fast as possible because in a way you're relying on your subconscious. You're trusting whatever your brain is doing, whatever, quick. The idea is like there's something deeper in your mental faculties, your whole body or something, your whole spirit is doing the work. And so
you're just trusting that. These things are coming out, you don't know exactly, but you know that they've been in there. You've been meaning to say them, or they're happy discoveries, you surprise yourself. I think if you're really doing art properly, you have to be, like, surprising yourself constantly with things that you like. You're like, "Oh, wow, that's better than I thought I could do. Oh, that's pretty good, actually. That's not bad. Maybe I'm not bad at this. I'm gonna keep going." And, I like writing fast. That's to me, it's like searching for Bobby Fischer. The movie Searching for Bobby Fischer is totally my story in poetry in New York. He goes to Washington Square Park, and there's also the Marshall Chess Club with Bruce Pandolfini, where it's like the proper way. That's like academia. That's like indoors. You get a teacher. It's slow. It's methodical. You study chess all day. You study poetry all day. All you fucking do is read poetry, think about poetry. Your whole life is consumed as a child chess master. That's all I did was like read about chess, play on my chess computer, play chess with myself, study chess problems. Poetry was like that. It was like all I did was read poetry, think about poetry, and it still is like that in a lot of ways. But he discovers Lawrence Fishburne and all the Potzers in Washington Square Park who are like hustlers. To me, that's open mics. That's street poetry. That's stand-up comedy. It's like a quick fix. It's kind of a guilty pleasure. You really shouldn't be doing that. You should be at the Bruce Pandolfini Chess Club, with all of the academics and the MFAs, and you should be well-bred and well-groomed, and you shouldn't be like some homeless person hustling people 5-minute speed chess games for like drug money. But I don't know. My allegiance is to the bars and the streets. I just feel like uh it's more like uh positive. It's more good. It's that's where the real freedom is. It's the people's university. It's where the real audience is. It's not just a bunch of bourgeois fucking blue blood to the manor born, people who wanna feel fancy, people who want tenure, people who and it sucks that anybody who's smart like, okay, I was watching this Professor Zhang. I wanna get into this, Professor Zhang interview. He went to Yale. He's constantly talking about how he went to Yale, but he said he wanted to get a job as a chef because he wanted to work where regular people were. He wanted to be with regular people. Going to Yale, he was surrounded by, elites, rich people, people in whatever, secret societies, smart people, people that were gonna go on to run society. So he decided he wanted to work in a kitchen to be around real people. And he thought because he went to Yale that he would be this superstar chef within a year. He'd have his own restaurant. He'd be a celebrity chef, blah, blah, blah. He'd be the best chef in the world. And he found out he was like the worst person in his class. He couldn't do it. He was terrible. And it's like, to me, that's kind of like, I don't know. That's an example of like, to me, especially if you want to be a writer, if you want to talk about humanity, if you want to talk about the human soul, you need to be out in the neighborhoods with people like you're fucking Toni Morrison or Harper Lee or something. Like you need to be in public libraries. You need to be on the subway. You need to be in a poor neighborhood, with a bunch of fucking churches and fucking storefronts and shit with drum sets and a bunch of music gear with the whole rock band music setup. To me, those are the places that are like holy. Those are the places where like the real soul of humanity exists. Not that it doesn't exist in academia. And academia is awesome. Like, who wouldn't want to do that? But I also think that it's sort of an institutional capture. And there is sort of a battle, between who gets to write, who gets to be heard, who gets legitimized. and what you have to do to get to those places. You know, academia, there's all these ways that you have to be well groomed. You know, whereas like the street, I don't know, it's a whole different, it's obscene. You know, it's full of, it's like Henry the Fourth, Falstaff. You know, he's Prince Hal or whatever. He's royalty, but he goes to the tavern. You know, he goes to hang out with Falstaff because that's where the real spirit is. That's where the fun is. You know, to me, reading in bars, performing in bars, doing clown show, doing stand-up comedy, doing music, doing live streams, baby, and doing it out here, doing it out in Central Park, trying to make spaces for learning, for to teach about poetry, to think about poetry that don't cost anything. They're not gate kept. You know, especially now, there's all these absurd politically correct requirements. And that stuff, I'm not really against it politically. Like, I agree with their politics, actually, for the most part. I just don't think that it's a cool vibe for me. I mean, I feel like I went to this reading briefly last night. It was in the back room of Three Diamond Door. So it was like right in my neighborhood, so I could walk there. And it's like I didn't really want to go to an event and do the whole thing, but I just kind of I heard about it on Instagram and I just wanted to check it out. And so I just dropped in and it was cool. It was really nice. I mean, it was a beautiful room, you know, this unbelievable chandelier and like, you know, not renovated, this cool old bar. And kind of with like the back room, of that Long Island City bar, and everybody was sitting in a circle. I don't think there was even a mic. Maybe there was a microphone, but I don't think there was. But it was just like it's almost like group therapy or something. It's like where people go to, you know, talk about whatever, their identity victimization. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's like I don't really, you know, my poetry is going to seem incredibly like frivolous and like indulgent and it's ironic. It's ironic that well, you know, because the whole point of my poetry is to be, like, politically engaged and working for, like, goodness, but I'm sure it comes off as, like, indulgent and privileged or something in those contexts. I'm not reading some poem about I don't even know what to fucking write about. What would I write about to be like I need to write, like, some slam poetry, I guess. I need to figure out so this is something I'm wrestling with recently, is I'm constantly trying to figure out how to get back to writing something that is, like, normal. People seem to reject my Wordsworthian poetry of the common speech in adopting text grammar and syntax as my, well, it's really about the sound of thinking. My poetry is really about thinking. I don't even know if I'd call it poetry. It's more just like I'm trying to write down thinking. I like thinking. I like thinking as a form of show business. That's all I wanna do with this. You know, I think my problem with this is I've been trying to be funny too much, which, like, when I was actually funny, I was never trying to be funny. I was just trying to, like, tell the truth about whatever was going on. Whereas, like, now I feel like, "Oh, I've gotta come up with, like, these funny clips or something for TikTok." It's like, who fucking cares? I really just wanna, like, put my thoughts out there. And so stream of consciousness is the closest form to be able to do that, I feel like. But it's not easy. You know, it's not easy to constantly be pushing out your internal hidden, you know, there's things hidden under hinder. Um, so I want my poetry to have all that. You know, I want my poetry to have this cacophony of complex interactions and throwbacks, and in a certain way, like, all my poems have become a part of this larger book, which is like this New York life novel of the last 5 years. And so reading them one at a time out of context, it's an ongoing narrative. It's more like prose, it's more like this is the latest installment of like my life adventures and thinking and, you know, um, coincidental synchronicity. Like there's this whole, my book has all these bigger sequences that kind of anchor it. So there's this whole poem Green Out, which is all the month of November 2024. And so it's like in real time, you're seeing the sort of re-election of Trump, the return to that. It sort of snuck up on us. And so I think it's valuable just as sort of like a timeline of how it actually went down, glued in with all the rest of the things that were going on with my life, other subject matters, seeing Francis Ford Coppola on the street. All of that shit is happening at once in your life. So why not write about it that way? Rather than like, oh, I'm going to write some essay or like, auto fiction story about, oh, I was with Philip in fucking Rockefeller Center. We were watching it on MSNBC. I mean, I could do that too. Now I've got the raw material of like the notebooks because my poems really are just like notebooks of ideas that are sort of smashed together like peanut butter and jelly and banana and bacon. But they probably don't make that much. That's why I put them on the internet. It's like you can watch all of my poetry on TikTok. Maybe not all of it, but most of the stuff I publish and read publicly, you could go back and you could go to any point in my life and watch a fucking TikTok short poem that's like a little snapshot of that day or whatever, that era, whatever was going on in my life with Ashley or my job or the open mic or whatever the fuck is going on. Politics. Professor Zhang was saying something, or I don't know. I do think something about Trump is a psychic demon, and he thrives by getting people to pay attention to him. All he wants is people to talk about him, people to pay attention to him, whether it's good or bad. I do think there's truth to the idea that like he's managed to capture the attention of the human race maybe in a way that no fucking other human being maybe ever has. And like he said something about Trump wants to live forever. All these fucking billionaires want to live forever or something. And so Trump wants to live forever. Like, how when I was growing up, the History Channel showed Hitler documentaries like literally all fucking day, every day. Hitler was like this constant subject of people's thinking, and he was universally recognized as like the most evil person ever. Hitler was just like very present in the culture as like this example of like, and so people were constantly talking about Hitler, or, he was being, I don't know if kept alive, but like, it was way after World War II, and just like, a lot of jokes are about Hitler. A lot of fucking movies reference Hitler. And Trump is kind of setting himself up, I feel like, for a similar where it's just like there's gonna be all the History Channel documentaries in the 2040s are gonna be like MAGA America, the Magenreich. And so he's sort of projecting himself into history like one of these world dominating, like Alexander the Great or a Genghis Khan or a Hitler or a, every once in a while, some power hungry dictator, narcissist comes along with a silver tongue and a rapier's wit and seduces, the power levers into their control. And Trump could be the baddest fucking antichrist of them all. We don't know. But at the same time, I think what Trump derangement syndrome is just like what it really means is you're just like obsessed with him. Zhang was saying something about, there's liberals who wake up every day who can't wait to start to read the news, to think about Trump. He lives in their head rent free, right? Like that's everybody's favorite expression now. I live in your head rent free, meaning you're thinking about me. I don't even know who you are. And you think about Trump all the fucking time. He doesn't know who you are. So you're giving him free real estate. You're giving him your power in a way. And God knows how much of my power I've given away to Trump. As a person of white privilege, uh, it made things difficult for the past decade. But, I don't know. It's like you can't afford to ignore him or it, but it's like, how much fucking uh does this actually affect? Like, this clearly has no effect on actual policy. Like, Trump is getting his fucking way with everything, and uh he there is no fighting back, really, like at all. There's no like fucking Congress isn't trying to stop him. I mean, Mamdani, I guess, is a political, but how does what does all the punditry add up to? I mean, well, to be honest, I just think somebody called Zhang the Chinese Alex Jones. I had a TikTok video about Zhang, and somebody in my comments was like, Professor Zhang is the Chinese Alex Jones, which I don't really think that is fair. I mean, I guess the further out you go with Zhang, the more crazy he probably gets. I haven't really heard his opinion about aliens or anything, but like, to me, his analysis of like geopolitics and, the fact that he's a high school teacher, I admire. And, I don't agree with everything he says, but he's an anti vaxxer, which, and so in a certain way, he probably is right wing. Um, or, most things on YouTube are right wing, or at least like they're at least like slanted that way slightly. Things like Tucker. That's why like these are the only voices that matter now. That's why there is no left wing Joe Rogan, because like they don't promote that shit. They don't promote left wing like it's Hassan Piker who was born rich and just has the money and he's a Chad and he's everything the sort of woke left wants their icon to be. He's more against the DNC than he's against Trump. And he's naive about communism. And he's the opposite of a communist. He's got all these expensive clothes. He's shocking his dog with this fucking shock collar. It's like his whole shit is like these luxury I think he lives in Beverly Hills or something. It's like this guy is not like some hero of like the working people. I suspect he's big on the fucking internet because he has money to buy viewers.
Yeah, it what someone saying.
That's not to say that, I mean, obviously he's a Chad and he's articulate about whatever his beliefs are, but to me, I like Sam Sater sort of, but there's not really a left. They don't promote it. YouTube, any kind of left anything is probably some niche, very small audience art podcast or something. And then everything else on YouTube is like at the very, at the very least, it's like center right. Something like Zhang, I would say he's probably like center right. He's religious. Uh, I think he's sort of somebody who doesn't like either side. I don't think he doesn't like Trump. He thinks Trump is like dumb and stuff, but he's not. He's one of these people that just I don't think he really likes either side or cares for either side. But what good does it do to pay attention to every little fucking thing Trump does? I mean, it's a lot of what I do. It's just like sit at home listening to fucking Professor Zhang or various podcasts on YouTube about, every little. I'm constantly refreshing Drudge Report. And granted, we are living in a time of like potential nuclear. I mean, this is as dangerous a time in world history, probably since the Cuban Missile Crisis. And so it's weird to me that people are like checked out. They don't care. They don't want to talk about it. They're trumped out. They've just got fatigue, the news cycle. So I don't know. That's why thought I'd talk about poetry for an hour. The Enchaffed Flood. What a gay title. The Enchafed Flood. It's chafing. What the hell does that mean? The Enchafed Flood. See, like, so an example would be like this F in Shakespeare's time. A lot of times they used an F for an S and vice versa. It kind of looks like an S if you put a little thing at the bottom. And so in Paul Muldoon's book, it's like, that's a legitimate misreading of this. If you wanted to read this as a enchased or even enchanted almost is in there, right? Like there's other words within this word and this word, fool, whatever anagrams, because your brain in a certain way is doing that. Like we really only see the patterns of the broad strokes of the letters and our brain kind of puts in the details or whatever. And so deep in your unconscious, you probably are scrambling this and doing anagrams and thinking about all the different alternative, that this could be enchanted and chased, even though enchased is not a word. Uh, food.
So tender.
Not that you want to get carried away with that stuff, but if it lends itself to some kind of, hidden, deeper thing, why not? And one of the most interesting books I read was by Elaine Scarry. It was all about the sonnets, and it was just crazy how many hidden. It was like Shakespeare had put the name of, like, who he was writing the sonnets to in, like, hundreds of lines of the sonnets in anagrams, like, because those letters were in the word, all out of order and things, but, if you're a real poet, you're able to do things like that. Your brain understands in some kind of, like, light speed, unconscious way that all of those other combinations and possibilities are included in the linear, coherent, legible sentence of whatever the hell it is that you're actually saying. And so the letters, the combinations of letters, they have textures, they have colors, they have, physical substance, physical meaning. It's some of them are like tree bark, some of them are like leaves, some of them are yellow. And that's the kind of thing I don't know if you really can teach that. Everybody's probably got their own sense of that. Maybe you sharpen it, you tune into it. To me, part of the being a poet and part of poetry is it's like a whetstone for your senses. It's a way of paying closer attention, of seeing what's really there rather than just, a lot of times media, mass media, movies especially, are selling us this kind of prepackaged experience, this prepackaged tale and moral, and here's how you're supposed to live. Here's somebody who you should base your here's an idea, whereas looking at life, seeing how it actually is without those kind of shortcuts of here's the Hollywood version. Here's the my experience was just like this movie, or I mean, it's something we're constantly saying and constantly dealing with. To me, poetry, I guess, is sort of an antidote to that type of thing. The sort of McDonald's uh happy meal of consciousness. Put a toy in there, put a bunch of fatty, unhealthy food with a bunch of salt, preservatives, give it like amazing packaging, colorful, gamify it, gamify the packaging, put a little crossword puzzle on there, a word find, make that so you can turn the box into some kind of castle or something for the toy. My food is word salad. My food is like kale, poetry, some food you just don't want to eat. You're like, yeah, I don't want that. I want chicken nuggets and sweet and sour sauce. I don't want deciduous fucking greens. All right, maybe I should keep walking. Let me finish smoking this. We're here among the cherry blossoms, talking about poetry. It's National Poetry Month. Professor Zhang is a poetry professor. He said the Divine Comedy is channeled from the universe. It's like God wrote it. He says it's the greatest book ever written. But the book he recommends people to read is the Iliad, which I think is true. The first class I took in college was the Iliad and the Odyssey. So the beginning of my academic, it all started with the Iliad. And he talks about in this, right? Because the idea is like Odysseus is not at sea on purpose. He's trying to get home. The sea is like this obstacle between him and where he wants to be. But there's also some sense that, like, I don't know. He's supposed to be there. He needs to be there. He's got to go through all that shit before he's allowed to go home. Nobody really knows why. It's like a labyrinth.
Oh, so you never like fuck your word.
And
And it's an SF, so there's like what, like five.
they were talking about how the journey became more of a metaphor for like people's lives at a certain point. I think when people became more like sedentary. I don't know. I was reading it on the train. I've never even heard of this book before. But I saw it and I was like, okay, let me at least try to read something that's like hard to read. I'm trying to get back into reading again. You know, but I've been trying to embrace the screen and sort of modern techniques for literature. I'm trying to be the Homer of YouTube. You know, Homer was at the beginning of poetic tradition, at least in the West, and it's oral. It's like memorized. He was blind. He was gay and blind. I don't know if people know that, but Homer was gay and blind. So he was a disabled queer artist. He was a disabled queer spoken word slam poet, okay? Homer. Kind of a butch name. He'd probably be at the Woodstock Ashram open mic with Shiv Miraboto. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. So he was a gay, disabled seer. You know, why is it? It's weird when people are traumatized or something, they develop like superpowers. You know, like people who are fat when they're kids or they're gingers. You know, you get made fun of for a couple years when you're a kid, and all of a sudden you grow up to be like some adult that like has some kind of like really overcompensated talent or something, or more well-adjusted sense of yourself. I don't know. Like Homer. So he was just like singing for his supper, basically. As far as I know, I'm not exactly sure, but I don't think Homer ever wrote anything down, maybe ever in his entire life. Do we know? Did Homer use like a fucking parchment or papyrus or any shit like that? Gilgamesh. Did they write Gilgamesh like on a fucking typewriter? They had fucking cuneiform tablets and shit. It was clay tablets, but like the people that actually wrote that shit down, it was almost more like a craft, carving it in there. I'm not sure if they wrote it that way. It was probably another oral, and somehow they memorized it. Homer's shit was just so fucking. He was blind, so he developed this crazy warehouse memory. You know, like look at Notorious B.I.G.'s freestyle. That's an example of like the power of the human unconscious or something. If you're able to lock into that flow state, like Tim Dillon. So I've been self-conscious. Well, somebody told me that a friend of a friend. Well, I won't say it. So, um,
Oh, they only get set.
maybe I should start off. Let me just hit this real fast. Okay, what else do I need to talk about? People want to hear about poetry. It's Poetry Month. What else are we reading, people?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even. What was the last like poem thing that like really grabbed me? Uh, you know, I try to get my poetry from like the people now. Doing the open mic, going to open mics. I try to just like receive it firsthand from and just whatever grabs me. There's definitely pretty regularly every week there's people at the open mic that I think are strong writers and are worth hearing and just as valuable as anything in the legacy media or the mass media or whatever, the monoculture. Uh and not that I like read it or investigate it too closely. Uh, I do want to read that James Schuyler biography that came out this year. He's one of my favorite poets and has been for a long time. Not just one of these people jumping on the fucking bandwagon. So I've heard a lot of people talking about that. Oh, this performer at the open mic who does music typically has a book out with Song Cave that looks really good. I'd like to check that out. Song Cave generally does good. I like their stuff generally. Um, to me, it's become so cost prohibitive to keep a library and, in lieu of artistic success, my, career and trajectory has been more about class warfare. And so it's a lot of money to buy books now and afford an apartment where you keep books. And don't get me wrong, like I always want to have books around and I still need books and I want to garner things from books and I'm constantly trying to spend time with books. And so, one of the things you hear constantly is like it's just a better source of information, like if you read multiple books a week, you learn more. You it's a way of self-improvement, I guess. It's superior to just listening to a bunch of junky YouTube podcasts with Professor Zhang. Or I don't know, audiobooks are not the same. Listening to poetry reading, not quite the same as reading. I mean, these were lectures, so he probably did deliver this orally. And I've been more trying to just explore oral sonic delivery methods. And to me, the phone, YouTube, to lesser degree, Instagram, TikTok, as a delivery method, it's like I can get way more poetry out to way more people for free by posting it on YouTube or posting it on, like how many people have we been able to platform through the open mic? It's like we've literally had hundreds, if not thousands of fucking poets. And it's like, okay, I don't have a magazine per se, but like you can go to any of the fucking open mics we've ever done. You can turn the subtitles on. You can read the goddamn captions if you want. But it's like there they are. There's the performances, there's the poems of hundreds of fucking poets. And so it's a huge archive of poetry and it's free. You can get on your phone, you can watch it any fucking time, anywhere. You don't have to buy it in a bookstore. In the way that bookstores are tied to gentrifying neighborhoods and poetry for that matter. Poets a lot of times are like the front lines. They're like the D-Day invasion, of gentrification. They're like the first guys, the first line out of the fucking boats. They're storming the beach of Crown Heights and now East New York. And bookstores are a lot of times at the center of that. But bookstores a lot of times the anchor of like the gentrifying white people in the neighborhood. And I don't really love that. I don't want to contribute to that. That's why I've been more of an adopter of like libraries and things over the past few years because there's no money involved. Libraries are free. There's homeless people there. It's just, you can, there's thousands of books, so you read about shit that might not catch your eye otherwise. It's like I've had to move apartments so many times, moving, thousands of goddamn books up and down stairs and shit, especially books you hardly ever look at. You couldn't possibly look at all of them that much. I mean, I do look at all of them and I look at some of them a lot, but it's hard to keep 3,000 books or however many it is around when you don't even fucking have a job. It's getting less and less easy to do that. And so YouTube is a library of the air. And so is fucking the internet. Why not just one thing I want to start to do? I've got a PDF on my phone of my novel, City Life. It's 560 pages, and I will airdrop it to anybody at the reading for free. They can have a PDF of my novel, poem, City Life for free in a PDF form at the reading. I will airdrop it to you. Bam, bam, bam. There it is. You can have it for free. Venmo me if you want. But I just that's how the literature should be distributed. If people are reading on their phones, you can read it on your fucking phone. It would be cool to have the book, but the book weighs 15 fucking pounds and it costs $30 or something to even make it. And so I love books as much as anybody, believe me. I've spent a lot of and that's another aspect of this, is I feel like I'm too emotionally reliant on books. It's like a weakness. And good did it ever do me? Reading seems, it's too much about the intellect. It's not enough about feelings. And I don't know. It's just become like a snobby status symbol for it's a class signifier. If you're poor, you probably don't even know how to read. It's like it's shocking the number of adults that are like illiterate. I didn't even think that was a possibility. And I think as poets, you have to be ready to write for people who are illiterate. Not that they're your target audience per se, but I don't know. My sympathy is kind of with the illiterate. I think there's something more gnarly about the illiterate. That's generally where like the best slang comes from. People that are supposedly ignorant usually come up with like the most interesting turns of phrase because they live in just like a speech culture. They're on the job all day or whatever, riding in trucks together, working together, drinking, smoking, whatever the fuck. And I'm for the people. Open mic is for the people. That's not to say you want to be dumb. You want to be as smart as you can be. I try to do both. I try to write like an idiot, full of puerile things for dumb people. Sex and violence, Put as much sex and violence into your poetry as possible. That's what the studio executives told me. This poem needs more sex and violence. No, I don't know. Poetry, people want sincere vulnerability and like, you need intersectionality. I don't have any intersectionality. All I can write about is being poor. And, that's like almost by choice. I've taken a vow of poverty. It's part of poetry, I think, or I don't know. It's obnoxious to see all these people have these like swanky poetry lives. These very bougie poetry lives. Uh and so it's a matter of, not necessarily that the underclass needs to reclaim poetry, things like hip hop, even country music. Uh, I'm just doing my thing, just doing my thing. That's like poetry for the masses. Stand up comedy, poetry for libertarians. And I guess I'm trying to write poetry for an audience that doesn't exist, like some kind of mass, blue collar, scatological, working class. Like if you've ever seen the movie Major League about the Cleveland Indians, that movie's kind of really about like working class being overcoming as an underachiever. I don't know. For some reason, just psychologically, I feel like that movie was like formative to like our spirit, who we were, how we identified. Like the Indians, the worst team in baseball, full of these convicts, these losers, broken down, has-beens, narcissistic Roger Dorn, voodoo guy, the old guy, up your butt, Jobu. Charlie Sheen. I feel like the wild thing of poetry. I have no control, but a lot of attitude.
Like when you're doing like those more intense
And
workouts, really getting that's really working your fats.
you don't want to slow down. You just want to keep smoking weed and letting her rip. Because what is poetry if not just like your feelings and your personal drama and your soul? Don't other people care about my feelings as a middle-aged white man? People don't want to hear about the exhaustive details of my inner hot thoughts that should probably remain hidden. I'm just doing my thing. I thought that's what poetry was. I need to simplify. I need to dumb it down. Trying too hard. Need to slow it down a little bit. I'm just doing my thing. And I want to do like a poetry workshop or some kind of small poetry, gathering. Not just poetry. If other artists want to come to, clowns or musicians or comedians, just have a small little salon type, maybe with some light performance things, maybe with some critic sesh, who knows? I used to do that at the Slooge. We did that a couple times. We had small reading, people bring one poem or something. You sit around in a circle with some wine. Poets love to do that kind of shit. They don't need anything else. If poets can get in a room with some wine, they'll read to anybody. But especially if it's just like a group of 6 to 10 or 12 poets that just like bunch of low life, poor ass weirdos. They're all queer, they're all freaks, they're autistic, they're neurodivergent, they're traumatized, they've been molested, they've been raped, they've been, discriminated against, and they want to talk about it. They're here to get attention and feel like, performance superstars with their gospel of their freestyle rappa-blappa. I think that's beautiful. I think that is great. I think that's what human beings should do. Human beings absolutely should just uh make music, make the music of their souls and read it to each other. It's nice that I think poets do want audiences, but I don't know. Maybe that's just any subculture in New York. People want to throw themselves into, if you're a comedian, you're probably hanging out with all the other comedians every fucking night. Musician, same thing. You just want to throw yourself into it. I like some cross pollination. I like hanging with different groups of people, like with the open mic. It's not any one thing. There's strength, like being in a poets only crowd is probably where I feel most at home, I guess. Um, there's because they're just analytical and verbal, and they're sort of accepting of poets. I think are like super narcissistic, but they're also like comfortable with like the truth, honesty, human sized. I think they might even be suspicious if there was like some kind of huge, huge, huge audience. They'd probably love it, but poets are kind of fine, like I said, to just read to other poets and shit and drink wine, and they'll all fuck each other. They all hook up with each other because poetry is about like taking some kind of like super minimal, minuscule little miniature, the most microscopic parts of experience and just savoring it, appreciating it, dignifying it, giving it space, giving it consideration, paying attention to it. And so you can find beauty in ugliness. A lot of poetry is about like salvaging refuse, things that are thrown away by other people, queer, disabled, all the marginalized identities. That is kind of where poetry thrives and like they are the most important people in a way in that community. They have a lot to say because of, um or it's not football, it's not mass media where it's like traditional hetero whatever the hell. So I don't know. Poets are kind of down for the party and the hang and just creating poetry uh ambiance together, poetry worlds together, poetry vibes. Small, I think they maybe overestimate their poets, the unacknowledged legislators of the world. Not sure. Meanwhile, stand-up comedians are the acknowledged legislators of they elected the fucking super dictator. Poets need to get a little more acknowledged. I don't know. Why are they unacknowledged? Are they actually legislating anything? Oh, let me read this passage from Rambo that Auden quotes about democracy. This is from a Rambo poem called Democracy. The flag is in keeping with the unclean landscape, and our jargon drowns the sound of the drums. At certain centers, we will encourage the most cynical prostitution. We will crush logical rebellion. Let us go to dusty and exhausted countries, put ourselves at the service of monstrous industrial or military exploitations. To our next meeting, here, no matter where, conscripts of good intentions, we shall have a ferocious philosophy. Dunces shall be devotees of knowledge, sybarites, enthusiasts for comfort, and for this busy world there shall be disillusion. This is real progress. Forward, march. And so the idea is like Rambo was sort of a MAGA, I think. Um, sounds like, he's sort of uh none of the writers we are discussing had much good to say for laissez-faire democracy. Rimbaud's poem on that subject expresses an attitude shared by most of them. The flag is in keeping. So this was in 1870 or something. The flag is in keeping with the unclean landscape, and our jargon drowns the sound of the drums. I mean, that could be about podcasting, right? Our jargon. And the sound of the drums, war drums, slowed down Macarena on TikTok. The flag is in keeping with the unclean landscape. I mean, that's one thing people are constantly complaining about America's. New York is dirty. America is, look at all the ugly signs, the car culture. It's just a big fucking junkyard. The flag is in keeping with the unclean landscape. So yeah, the flag is like that. At certain centers, we will encourage the most cynical prostitution. We will crush logical rebellion. I mean, doesn't that sound like Washington? Or that could be any number of things. The most cynical prostitution. We will crush logical rebellion. I mean, that sounds like any number of things with Bernie or the left or, they're crushing any logical rebellion anybody has. Let us go to dusty and exhausted countries, put ourselves at the service of monstrous industrial or military exploitations. So this is, fucking 1870 they're talking about. Uh military exploitations, monstrous industrial military exploitations. That's like obviously we're involved in a monstrous industrial and military exploitation right now. That's not a bad way to put it. What's going on in the Strait of Hormuz and Karg Island, and that's exactly what it is. A monstrous industrial and military. Let us go to dusty and exhausted countries. Sounds like the Middle East to me. I mean, I could be strongly misreading this. I could be way off on this. It could be about something else totally different. Conscripts of good intentions, we shall have a ferocious philosophy. Dunces shall be devotees of knowledge, sybarites, enthusiasts for comfort. I don't know what a sybarite is. Sybarites. Do not know what that word is. Sounds pretty cool. For this busy world, there shall be dissolution. Yeah. I mean, I thought democracy was pretty good until, it wasn't, you didn't really hear too many people talk trash about democracy until Curtis Yarvin, Peter Thiel, and all this sort of dark enlightenment philosophy just sort of crept into power in 23, 24, 21, 22. And this sounds like a lot, cynical about democracy, how democracy leads to these things: prostitution, crushing rebellion, military exploitation. That's democracy. This is not monarchy. This is this is a quote from Baudelaire about democracy. Baudelaire foresaw a democratic future when, quote, the son will run away from the family not at 18, but at 12. Emancipated by his gluttonous precocity, he will fly not to seek heroic adventures, not to deliver a beautiful prisoner from a tower, not to immortalize a garret with sublime thoughts, but to found a business, to enrich himself, and to compete with his infamous papa. And the daughter, quote, with an infantile wantonness will dream in her cradle that she sells herself for a million. So this is what they think of democracy. Democracy is going to cause the dissolution of the family. The son is not going to try to become heroic, deliver a beautiful prisoner from a tower, or immortalize a garret with sublime thoughts like a poet, like an artist, like a knight, but a businessman to compete with his dad. So that's capitalism. That's the free market, more as much as it's democracy. I mean, maybe they go hand in hand. See, that's the thing, is all these things happen at once. Romanticism, the French Revolution, the American Revolution, uh, uh, in, Industrial Revolution. They all kind of happened around the same time. American Revolution was a little before, but Industrial Revolution was what, like 1780s, 90s, 18. That's when lyrical ballads came out. That's when Romanticism sort of happened. That's when the French Revolution was. And so the particularization of everyone's roles from being these like yeoman farmers and having public land to being, citizens of like a metropolis, alienated workers in factories. Um, Everything's particularized to like different specialties. You're X, Y, Z, and that's like all you do. You work in a factory, you work in a fucking uh and so the poetry sort of went one way. Romanticism was a reaction into nature against the industrialization of cities, the countryside, England, coal mining, engines, smokestacks, monstrous industrial or military exploitations. And so the poetic methods shifted. Romanticism was sort of more about the eye, more about nature, trees, flowers, uh, I don't know, bright star. Uh, Nature as manifestation of God versus industrialized cityscapes. William Blake, Songs of Innocence, Songs of Experience. Innocence being unmediated. Oh shit. Okay. Okay. It's like these people have never seen a live streamer before. We'll walk some more. Let me see. This thing will probably go out at a certain point because I imagine there's a lot of people in the park. We're just walking and talking about poetry here, reading, talking out our ass. Uh, Close reading. And what better place to do it? It's Cherry Blossom Week. All I need is Central Park. I mean, Prospect Park is nice. Brooklyn Botanical Gardens, everybody talks about the cherry blossoms there, and I've been to those. They're great, but you can't beat Central Park. I'm sorry. Prospect Park is nice. Prospect Park is more like kind of a circle. It's like you kind of swirl. There's the Long Meadow, which kind of breaks into like that area over by the lake. And then that sort of comes back. There's like the forest and um that area with like the Vale of Kashmir. Uh Central Park, I don't know. It's more this unbroken kind of ramble, and all these things sort of come into your. It's more like an amusement park of nature. Manhattan really is an amusement, especially now. It's like Cedar Point for adults, for like adult fun, sex, food, culture, music, whatever, drugs, Bolivian marching powder. You want like the fruits of civilization. It's like you come in, you jet in, you Uber around, you eat, you watch, whatever. That's one thing that this book, The Enchafed Flood, it's juxtaposing like the city versus the country. A lot of times the desert or the sea being the hero, something happens in the city, they go to the country to sort of like assimilate the lesson they've learned so that they can go back to the city
or they start from the city, they go out into the country to kill some kind of fucking threat, Hrothgar, and, that sort of, like, fixes the city. But either way, they have to go alone out into this the place, the idea is the desert is a place where there aren't the pleasures and the fruits of the city. There's no beautiful bodies, like this is Auden's language, not mine, W.H. Auden. And there's no food, there's no, the things that make the city kind of this alluring, glamorous, attractive place. Like, why do people come to Newport? They come we're just attracted to the abundance, the potency, the power, the fame. There's so many people, there's so many options. It's exciting. The best of the best, supposedly. So I guess as humans, we're curious about that. We want to be near that. Well, I had two people watching for a long time. It's probably what? Is it Bruce Holiday and I mean, the fucking okay, what's going on with the Trump situation? We should talk about it a little bit. I mean, it's right now, if you can believe it, it feels like they're just going back and forth with these like AI memes. It's AI slop meme warfare. They send us a fucking meme, we send them Trump apparently, his retweeting's getting more and more nuts. He tweeted a picture of himself as Jesus, which shouldn't really come as a surprise to anybody. And then it said he retweeted like a graphic murder video, which that doesn't really surprise me either, actually. Trump probably like was watching snuff films and shit like the 70s with Roy Cohn. While they had gay sex. Uh Short selfie stick here. I don't want to be obnoxious about it. I don't know, I've done 2 hours, fuck. I'm gonna try to continue to do this until like last time the signal just went out because there were so many people in the park with their phones and shit. So I'm gonna go to at least 72nd Street with this. Oh fuck, I'm on. I could go get Tiki Chick. Is this 86th? Maybe I'm past it already. I don't think I'm too far. Street is that? I'm not going back. Um, this might be like the 85th right here. I don't know. I'm not going. I still got food from earlier. I don't need it. Anyway, what the fuck was I talking about? Trump. Oh yeah, they were doing AI meme warfare. He tweeted a graphic snuff film. Um, uh, no one's fucking videoing you. I don't know. People are really upset by the camera for some reason. It's kind of strange. Whatever. I need those glasses. I need those meta glasses with the cameras in the. Those are like real controversial now. Because people use them, you don't know if they have them. So you're like filming people without their awareness. People don't really like that. Surprise. Uh, just giving a poetry lecture. That's all. You know, this is good. This is for the good of humanity. I'm talking about Professor Zhang. Yeah, and then Trump is also going back and forth with the Pope. Believe it or not, Trump is like insulting the Pope. The Pope is like calling the Trump on all his bullshit, calling the war out for being wrong. Trump, I don't even know what the fuck they say about him. He's a loser Pope. Well, his brother, okay, the Pope's brother is like a Trumper. So of course Trump like throws that in space. He's like, this Pope is whatever. I don't know, or something. He's weak on crime, I think is what he said. The Pope is weak on crime, everybody. Imagine that. The Pope. Was Jesus weak on crime? See, this is what I mean. If you're like left, people just think you're weak. If you're like against the war, it's like, oh, you're weak. You got to fight war every once in a while. Otherwise, you're just weak. So the Pope is weak on crime. I didn't really realize it was the Pope's job to be strong on crime. But Trump is in a Twitter slap fight. Which, you know, I mean, this is how can we look away? You know, when shit like this is happening, how can you not pay attention? How can you not have Trump derangement syndrome? And that's what I mean. Like to some degree, I think that's what Trump derangement syndrome is. It's just like it's just paying attention to everything the guy does. You know, it's just like why? Why do we care so much? I mean, who cares? Democracy. Who fucking cares? You know, so what? There's gonna be a draft. They're gonna have my 42-year-old ass. Who cares? Why are you so obsessed with it? Why do you have Trump derangement syndrome? Why don't you get a life? You know, you don't have your own fucking life, so you just obsess over goddamn Donald Trump all the time. It's pathetic. And look at me and my selfie stick. Aren't I cool? That's right. I'm a streamer. I'm part of the streaming revolution. What about it? You got 0 people watching. I need one of those just like they have cameras that like literally they just look like a selfie stick. This thing kind of noticeable, kind of obnoxious, and doesn't really just blend in or anything. Ugh, what do I want to do here? No one's watching. Do I have anything else to talk about today? Let me think for a minute. Yeah, so I don't know. I've been trying to just like listen to local poets, listen to people at open mics. You know, I'll go to the library and peruse poetry books, whatever they have. I'm just trying to think of anything that grabbed me recently. It's being like really good.
I feel like once you get past the initial reaction, it is. And then at the end, like, yep. So I don't know what it seems like. So dumb. It is.
Who knows? Who knows? Sitting on a park bench. Okay, what should I do? What should I do now?
Another that you should be referring to. Like, I don't want to read that. I like.
what I want you to do is
I
say.
don't know. Maybe I'm high. I feel like that looked like my friend back there. Can't tell if I'm high. Maybe I'm just high. I don't know. I don't know what she would be doing up here per se. I freaked out. I don't know. How do I? If I find out and I'll be weird about it. I mean, I don't know. There's more probably to see, but I kind of don't want to be obnoxious about it.
I don't even like, I know, truly, I don't even, it's not,
Hmm.
I think it's a.
I don't know. 2 hours. I guess it's fine. I mean, I did want to get some of these little cherry blossoms, but they're kind of further down. Probably get back on later, back at my place. So, thank you guys for watching, and we'll talk more. Poetry. It's poetry month, so
I think that's a good idea. Like, look,
this is a serious poetry lecture series. It isn't just some kind of stupid comedy podcast wannabe thing. So I'll probably get back on to. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a good night.